Royal Fetish.
My life's like a movie, paparazzi picture. If it's to get richer, then I'll probably get richer.
Royal Fetish.
What makes you filthy?
What makes me filthy?
Yes.
Ooh, that's a good question. I feel like I don't feel filthy. It's a reclaiming of the word filthy because, you know, just expressing your sexuality and being different has been labeled as filthy, and so it's a reclaiming of that word.
Right. What's a word that you've reclaimed?
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. I should know. Just pick something, Tiana. I guess the first thing that's popping into my head is maybe slutty. That I feel that was always a derogatory term. Yet I was like, I'm slutty. I want to be slutty, and I was like a sleekrit slut for like most of my life.
Sleekrit?
Sleekrit.
I think
That's gangsta. Sleekrit.
Slick and secret slut.
And you move sleekly. That's fire. I need that to be on a t-shirt that I can purchase from you. Sex work survival guide, sleekrit sluts. Say that fast as hell, like 5 times.
With a dick in your mouth.
Sleekritly.
Yeah.
What about you? What's a word?
A word, that bitch. I just love using it. I love it.
I love it.
I love it so much.
It's forceful when it comes out your mouth.
Yeah, sometimes it come out sleekly too. Like,
Yep.
I love it. I love how we use it like just amongst each other, and it doesn't, you know, like it doesn't mean anything derogatory. Like if you call me that, I'm just like, hey sis. How about for you?
Man whore.
Man whore. Did you ever not have claim to it?
Well, I feel like, you know, when people like man whore, they're like...
like dog or whatever.
Yeah. I was like, I want to use that shit as in a kingly way.
Okay. Okay. Good.
Y'all thought I was going to say another word, but that one ain't reclaimed. They be trying to act like it.
What word is that?
The one that the police use on you. Yeah, that one.
Okay, well.
That one.
So here we are reclaiming words, making up words. Who are we with? Who are these sleekrit sluts? Filthy, slutty bitches sitting here with this man whore
And this bitch.
We are here with Tiana, Glittersaurus Rex of the Sex Work Survival Guide, and FiveStar of Filthy Femdom.
Yes. Happy to be here.
Thank y'all so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So we thought about like the most uplifting topic we could possibly chat with you two about.
Sleekrit shame.
Shame. Sex and shame.
Yes, yeah.
But really couldn't, you know, pick a better topic. I mean, there's a million things that we can talk about and that we have been talking about, but couldn't pick a better topic specifically because of the things that you know, were just mentioning, like the need to reclaim things that have been used against. And you work with so many filthy femdoms and man whores.
It's true.
And
it's true.
Just all kinds of folks that probably have had lots of experiences and still experience coming up under shame associated with sex and sexuality. And you help people who are struggling with their sexual identities, sexual shame, expression, workplace discrimination, etc. Help them survive and thrive.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And yeah, we benefit from y'all's work. So.
Yes, and you help inspire it. Like, yes, no, you were part of my first inspiration for being in this industry and community. So,
Awesome. So when you think about sex and shame and like earliest thoughts and, you know, thoughts, memories, experiences, even like understanding that you were carrying shame, if you were, I'm making an assumption, this could be for all of us to chime in on, like what comes to mind?
Oh, church. Church and politics.
Okay.
Definitely for me, growing up in the church Like anybody who comes from one of those families where you have someone that goes to the church, not just Sundays, but like every day there's some sort of deacons meeting and such and planning for this event and da-da-da-da. So there was a lot of time, you know, when I'd be with my grandmother that I spent in the church, and then, you know, my mother as well. And anything sexual, whether it be attraction or the actual act or the lack of referencing anything sexual other than saying like something is wrong with whatever it is just my earliest recollection for sure.
Would you get reprimanded, or you just knew that was just like off limits?
I mean, it wasn't really the conversation I was trying to have. When I think about my earliest recollections or whatever, it was more overhearing things that adults were talking about to one another, and usually talking about somebody else. You know, like a conversation that they would be having about somebody else that's a Jezebel or so on and such forth from the neighborhood. Because it was like a very neighborhood church. So it's like everybody knew everybody, not just the ones who were in the church, but everybody knew everybody that lived outside and around in the community.
Yeah.
So if they were having a conversation about somebody, like this person, and then run down all the lines, you know?
And if you weren't in the church, you were out the church, which means you
was out there running them streets.
Ripping and running. How about anybody can relate to that?
A bit, yeah. I feel like family, faith, friends kind of play different roles. How I feel like parents first, handle masturbation when, you know, they catch their kids masturbating, or they see them doing self-pleasuring or self-touching kind of acts. And so I feel like I was kind of shamed around it, and talking to other friends and other people's experiences, like when their parents were like, okay, that's not something you do here, but that's something they do and it's totally okay. And then seeing how they're, you know, how that kind of unraveled for them, and then comparing that to myself. So there was a lot of shame built around even my own self-pleasure, let alone pleasure with other people and other bodies. And I did my grandmother was in the church. Like we had literally like a block away was the church, so very insular kind of community. My mom wasn't really a church person, so I always kind of got to get out of going all the time, but when she was babysitting me, which was a lot, I was definitely there tagging along with her, running through the pews, and, you know, especially when she had her deaconesses meeting, and yeah, so it definitely played a role in my life as well, and still kind of does. There's still a lot of unpacking and like rewriting of code that was kind of first inscripted.
Family, friends, and faith, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with the influence from all of those things. How about for you?
Same thing. I mean, I identify as a recovering Catholic for that reason. It's like, just like with, you know, alcoholism, like people are constantly like dealing with that addiction. It's like the consequences of growing up Catholic and all of that violence really from the church. And it does kind of, it feels like it centers around sexuality, because if you can control someone's sexuality, you can control them. And yeah, and I can identify with, you know, the guilt and shame around masturbation, and the community, like just hearing things in the community and what's right and what's wrong.
So we have the recovering Catholics over here, and the deacon's children. So we didn't spend. We went to church once a week, and Wednesdays when I was going through confirmation and communion, but it was, you know, no privacy in our household. Everything led to everything was centered around having an unwanted pregnancy. It's like we didn't even talk about sex. It was like we talked about how the stain that sex was going to leave. You know, so like always like, what are you doing in that bathroom? You know, it's like going to the bathroom, like, there, you know, for too long. Like just privacy, just let me know, like, you're not supposed to spend time with yourself, because you might be doing something wrong. And as I got older, I was like, oh, like that's what you think I'm in here doing? And then it became like, of course I'm not in there doing that in my own head. And so I started to create like, that must be bad. And then everything was like, if you go out and you're at the store too long, you're gonna get pregnant. But no, like nothing in between of like, how might that happen, and are there ways to maybe not have that happen when I go to the store? Like just everything centered around this like stain of people will know that you have had sex. Also watching my sisters get pregnant early because of no, context or education, and then seeing them be excommunicated from the family for a significant and like in a traumatic way portion of time. So it was like, for me, it's like, oh my God, I can't do this thing because like I could be kicked out. But hormones are fierce, and like you said, friends is fierce. So where I started to like, okay, I got to figure out how I can like take care of the way that I'm feeling and still not get in trouble and have the consequence. So it led to a lot of being sneaky, so much being sneaky. And the sneakier I became, the more shame I started to put. Like, what am I doing? I can't even let anybody know that this is happening. I can't, just like so much secretive stuff around it, that when I became an adult and could talk about it, I had to be like, I'm telling on myself. Oh my gosh, it became really hard to communicate my needs, things that I wanted, things that I felt excited about, because I had spent so many years being so careful to hide those things.
For the Catholic side of things, do you feel that y'all have any, I guess, like something internal that's like, I have to go to confession or I have to speak to somebody about this or anything like that?
Funny enough, I would pick the like lowest level sins to share in confession. I swallowed my bubble gum.
That's on the sin list?
I mean, I wasn't supposed to do it. I was being disobedient to, yeah. Okay. So, and then, however, Hail Marys, Our Fathers,
or if you fight with your brothers or sisters. Yeah, I did the same thing because it was so awkward, and it's also kind of creepy to have some like old guy like listen to like the sexual thoughts of children. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I always looked at it that's like also like how you talked about control within the community. Like if you know everybody's dirt, you have something on them for how you want to move throughout the community and shit.
Yeah, I didn't know who was on the other side of the confessional oftentimes, so I didn't know like what relationship that person he specifically had to anyone in my family who's been going to that church.
Yeah.
So even as a child where I didn't necessarily have anything sexual to share, this I also find interesting too. I should have been sharing what the sins that were being committed against me. But it's so one-dimensional that, you're supposed to confess your sins. So I would just find like the lowest level thing that was going to give me the least amount of prayer so I can be done with it.
One of my homeboys growing up was Catholic, and I remember we were having this conversation, and I was like, oh, he had to go to confession. He's like, I had to, say like, was it like a Hail Mary, Our Father, a couple of those, and then I was like, that's what you got? Like, because for me, anything in the black church, you're going straight to hell. Like, maybe if I did swallow my bubble gum, you disobedient, you're going straight to hell. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I already, like, when I was younger, for certain things that, I might have experimented with, I did have this internal feeling like, I'm going to hell.
And there was no way.
And I don't know, like maybe I would have to get born again or get rebaptized or something like that. And I wasn't prepared for that. You know what I'm saying? But like in my mind, I definitely felt like, oh shit, like I have gotten to a point by trying one or two things sexually that like I'm already on that path to hell.
Yeah, keep it going.
I think a lot of Catholics do think like go straight to the hell part.
Yeah.
Well, because we don't confess all the sins, so we don't even know how many of the prayers we're supposed to actually do. I used to like throw one extra for the thing that I didn't mention.
Just one extra. That's funny. Yeah, so you mentioned about not really knowing the steps between like not being pregnant and being pregnant, and subconsciously I had a similar experience. I realized when you brought that up with my mom when we would be going to the town that she grew up in Pennsylvania, and she'd be like, oh yeah, I went to school with that girl and this person, and they would look like 20, 30 years older, or like her grandmother, and she was like, oh yeah, she got pregnant when she was 16 and she got got pregnant when she was 13, and and this person did drugs, and so it was like drugs and sex. That's how you will end up. If you do those things. Was what I was sort of, unconsciously taking in, and so it kind of felt like, I don't think that maybe that was her intention to maybe deter me, but it was like in a very gentle kind of way that I didn't even realize until I was older. It was like, oh, why did I have all this fear of drugs and sex and intimacy in that kind of way, or partying too much, because I didn't want to end up like those people my mom was riding past.
Wow.
For me, my mother was different than the church, though. My mother was very much like, sex is something you do when you're old enough and more mature for it. And like, she was very, very much like, you're going to make those decisions when you're ready for it. Just talk to me if you have any questions. Nice. But the church that she went to was not that way. You know what I'm saying? And my grandmother was not that way. So I got caught by my grandmother once getting head. It was like the worst experience. Like, she just walked into my room. I was up there with this young lady at the time, you know what I'm saying? And my grandmother went off. She just started calling her every church name, screaming on her, screaming on me, and like, oh man, that was so bad.
Wow.
The shame.
The shame.
The shame.
Did you have a talk about it after?
No.
It was just cold silence?
It was just cold. After she got out all the words, it was...
How long did it take to get back in good graces?
Ooh, she was up visiting. She was at my mother's house visiting, so probably not until like the next time after that I went to go visit her, and there was no talk of it whatsoever.
So how does the things that we've talked about so far, and all the things in between there, like I know we can go on shame stories, like we could probably have a competition who got shamed the most, or came in contact with shame, because I think the way that we're also talking about it is that it wasn't necessarily like, you ought to be ashamed. It was messaging, and well, in your case,
she straight up
that was you.
All involved.
Yeah. Face to face. How do these experiences, how do you feel like it showed up in your adult life? Like, I know you said recovering and you're always having to. Can you talk a little bit more about?
Well, I think working in the industry, there's so much stigma, and so it's all about even just talking about your work with people who are not in the industry. It's just like, okay, I'm going to take a chance here and see if people judge me. And I've encountered judgment and shame, and one example that like really sticks with me is I do virtual reality porn, and so I was at a not porn virtual reality event, and it was a women's event, and so there was a lot of empowered women there, and someone recognized me. I was like, I recognize you from somewhere, and she later figured out that I was doing porn demos, VR demos, and then she screamed to the whole room, "You make rape VR."
Holy shit.
And that, I have to say, like, that took me back to the feeling of shame. Like, everyone in the room is looking at me like I'm perpetuating rape, and that accusation. And I think about it a lot.
That had to be recent.
It was about 2015 maybe. Yeah.
How did you respond in that situation?
I just kind of walked away, I think she thought she interpreted BDSM as rape, because it wasn't even rape role play. There was not even consensual non-consent, where there's room for that. I think there's room for that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even that. It was like a very easy, cute, I thought it was cute bondage demo.
Of course it was.
Because of course, I'm not going to show people the most intense BDSM scene as their first demo. But yeah, I kind of walked away and started talking to another group of people, but I feel like it was kind of an out of body experience, whereas I distanced myself from the whole experience.
I'm sorry that happened to you.
Yeah,
That's terrible.
That's crazy.
Does it influence your work?
It does, actually. I think about it a lot, and I I know, you know, like we're gonna be putting stuff out there. We're gonna be offending people, and you're gonna be misunderstood. It's just kind of something you have to accept in life, right? But the last thing I want to be seen as is someone who's perpetuating rape. Like it really, it hurts. And so I do think about it, and I think about how we are responsible for the kind of stuff that we put out there, and especially with BDSM and consensual non-consent, which is a totally valid like form of sexual expression. Especially, I mean, it requires a lot of communication, it requires safe words and stuff like that, but it's so easy to be taken out of context. So I do think about it. I do think about it because I do not want to be encouraging violence.
Yeah.
How do you think shame influences any aspects of your work?
There's a lot of overcompensation and like overly. As FiveStar is talking, I'm like, I can imagine you're just like, okay, like, you sure you want to be here? You sure you want to be here? Are you sure you want to be here? Okay, do we have all the checks and boxes? Okay, did we do the interview beforehand? Did we do the interview after? Like, okay, we did it. We said we want to be here. When are we going to get to the thing? But because of that experience, you know, and not wanting to relive that. And so I think for me, a lot of the shame as like an adult performer that also has a vanilla job that's also a parent, and all of the stigma that is like thrown at all the mix of those three things specifically. Because people are like, how can you help other people when somehow they think that doing sex work means that I need help myself, you know? And also, how can you take care of other people when, again, the stigma is that obviously you're doing this because you can't take care of yourself, you know, like those things. So I think there's an overcompensation to be like, hey, their kids are happy, they're clean, they're fine, you know, and I really know my shit over here. I am helping people, things are going well, like my clients are thriving, I have my, you know, I have my education, like I almost like want to put my degrees walking behind me at all times.
Degree porn.
I know, but it has my real name on it, and so whatever. But so yeah, I find like a need to often like put all of my qualifiers for why I should be respected, looked at as a full human. I can make sound decisions. Like I'm like constantly like shoving that down before people even ask or need to know. You know.
Yeah. And this person who said that to you, they consented to be there.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. It was because we did a demo and there was a room and it was on the door like there is adult content in here, so don't come in here if you don't want to see it. And we, you know, talked about it before, and I tend to over communicate for the same reason. And sometimes I'll even interrupt people's pleasure just to be like, are you good? And I'd rather, you know, it's like we're making movies, so I rather be checking in with people, and I tend to over, you know, communicate.
I think you do see other people shame a lot in our profession as well. Like, you know, you'll get people who will say some crazy wild shit to you on a site that they're paying to fucking be there for. You know what I'm saying? Like, wait a minute. Why are you flipping out right now? You paid to be here. This isn't like some shit that just showed up while you was watching television at home. You know what I'm saying? Like, this shit is something you chose to be there for.
You took steps.
Yeah, a bunch of steps. You took a bunch of steps to get here, bro. Like, what is your problem? Have you encountered any of that in your work?
Yes, and I relate to what you're saying about sharing what I do, and because I have so many different hats depending on who I'm talking to, I could be like production or operations, or I can be more broad, or, you know, like consultant. You don't know what the hell that is and what industry that, you know, considers of. So and sometimes I use it as like a weapon, like I'm poor. Like, what you gonna do about it? You don't talk to me, I'm a poor lady. I like spanking people and fucking them in the ass. What you gonna do about it?
Well, we just wanted to know what kind of sandwich you wanted there. I'm sorry. This is Subway.
So I've definitely had both experiences where it's, but at the beginning it was like, oh, I don't want to share, or if I was dating someone. I'm always nervous to kind of share, especially when I first started working more professionally in the industry as a pro dom and sugaring and camming, and then working with you guys more behind a camera for production. And so the more confidence I was doing with the work that I was doing with, even in myself, it became easier to then share that with other people. And also I feel like representation really matters, especially as people of color in this industry and the work that we're doing. And so for me, I feel like it's important for people to know that, like, yeah, we're out here, we're doing this. This is how we do it. This is why we do it. So those things have been more empowering than shameful. But at the beginning, it was very shameful, just because of internal things that I had about myself. But I always wanted to work in porn. I always loved porn. At first I was like, well, once you cross over, you can't really go back. So I feel like I was like slowly making my way to end up here, essentially.
It's interesting because there is like this shame for porn where they be like, don't run for public office. I'm like, have you seen the shit that these motherfuckers have done?
Seriously.
Like anytime I've grabbed someone by the pussy, it has been consensual. Like we have literally signed, like we asked, hey, what would you like?
Grab me by the pussy.
I got you. You know what I'm saying? And she like, preferably with your mouth. You know what I'm saying? But like, you know, I think that there is this whole thing where, and that's why I said, you know, initially, like just for me, I remember like church and politics, because I do think, you know, when I was younger, I remember like the whole Bill Clinton thing. And there was this shame, not even just for Monica Lewinsky that who they went after crazy, but also like on Hillary Clinton, who wasn't even fucking there. You know what I'm saying? And like, but like the way that shame is distributed to people. And it's also like, Clinton's shame should have been that he was a cheater, and that he was dishonest with the American people and his wife, and also this power that he used over Monica Lewinsky. But it was all just about getting your dick sucked. That was the part that they were like, this is horrible. He got his dick sucked. But the fucked up shit was all this other shit. You know what I'm saying? But they make the shame about the sex act, not the fucked up shit that is involved with. Because if you're just getting your dick sucked, like, and there's no abuse of power or lying and all this other shit, like, that's a beautiful thing. There shouldn't be no shame in getting your dick sucked or sucking dick.
I want my president to be relieved and stress free.
Hell yeah. I want to see him come out chill.
Exactly.
Now, about those student loans.
He's got nuclear codes. Like, no.
Hell yeah. I want him stressed out around that red button.
Exactly.
Chill, bro.
Exactly.
But I mean, like, for so much, like, and also just being, you know, I grew up in Jersey, so there's always a scandal around politicians in Jersey for some wild shit. And how people would respond to a sexual, of any sort, a sexual scandal, or if this politician was single or divorced or married or whatever. And then another one would be like, they stealing. You're way less mad about the stealing than them being divorced. Like, I don't understand. Like, at least, hopefully it was an amicable split. But that stealing, nah. Like, that's not okay. It's always kind of like positioned that way. And with porn, it's always like, you know, once you do that porn, you can't be a state senator or whatever the fuck, you know?
It's really interesting that you were talking about Monica Lewinsky, because that scandal had, amongst the church and so many things, had like such a heavy amount of pressure on oral sex.
Word.
You know, and like I think about like the music that came, like, I think she's like her name is mentioned like the most time, right? And like everything was like, oh, like, don't be a Monica Lewinsky. You got like, it's just like, oh, but I was doing that and it was enjoyable and now I can, and like, should I? And then on top of it, like, you know, black girls had so much stigma around giving head. So just how things that happen in politics, things that are referenced in non-pornographic media, can have such an impact on your own sexual behavior. I remember, I'm just gonna go ahead and say, I went to college with a girl who crossed another sorority than I did, and they gave her her line name was Monica Lewinsky, and she was a black girl. I don't know why they gave her that name. It's usually like usually those names are like some nickname, something that she did when she was online or what have you. But like no one ever is supposed to know the backstory behind it. But like the shame that she carried, like everybody make like clearly it has to do with something being, you know, her being scandalous. And we were adults already. We were in college, so like 20 years old still. Like she's an adult if that was something that she did. But like the way we were just like, oh my God, like why would they do that to her? It's like you couldn't even listen to anything that she said because she was like marked with this other woman's name about a scandal that this man did that was related to lying and cheating, not the sex act.
I mean, like, I think, like, and where my brain goes, that person that interrupted you when you were speaking, do they go to church and just yell about the scandalous shit that happens in the church? You know, and I find that it's easy for people to point their shame at porn because after you bust that nut, after you rub that one out and you come back down to earth, then they're like, oh man, what did I do? It's your fault. You know what I'm saying? But in the actual world, you have institutions that are not, like porn tells you, this is for adults. These are adults engaging in sex acts. Like nobody's like, let me go watch this porn to do some shit that's not porn. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not what you're there for. So if you're going to look for porn, you know what you're gonna get. But they save their anger, their frustration, their shame, and their disdain for porn when there's actual institutions that you're going there for other shit. Boy Scouts of America, fucking wrestling programs at Ohio State, fucking Penn State's whole fucking football team cover up, all this shit.
Gymnastics.
American gymnastics. Like, those are the motherfuckers you should be shaming. Those are the people you should be holding accountable because they're not there for that.
Right.
They are institutions that are meant to take care of people or teach people or, you know,
get them closer to God.
Word. You know what I'm saying? And even like recently, this whole shit that happened within the evangelical church. It's almost like it's swept.
Which one?
Yeah, not even just the Jerry Falwell one. There was one that was like a sweeping investigation.
Oh, where there were all those reports and they just covered them up.
Of spousal and marital abuse, child abuse, so on and such forth. And then these are the people who are saying like, we're gonna go after porn. When it's one of those kind of situations where it's like, yo, look at your own backyard, yo, clean that shit the fuck up.
Well, I think there is a lot of unfounded information out there about that porn has such an influence on people's sexual attitudes and behaviors, but we kind of all shared like having much earlier like desires in impulses, we all do as just humans. Before there was porn on your computer, people still had sexual impulses, and you know, so I think it's just often used as a scapegoat.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that shame that people are dealing with, that, you know, there aren't really outlets for shame. There aren't really outlets for people unless they're, you know, actively involved in therapy or actively involved in working on themselves through, you know, many different routes. But I think most people are like, because most of us grew up in certain institutions, we're like, I can't go to them with this because they're gonna send me to hell.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like even when we're encouraged, like for the example that popped up to my head was Superhead, which I felt was like the pendulum swinging after Monica Lewinsky, because we went from like, oh my God, women give blowjobs, to like, yeah, she gives the best blowjobs to every, you know, dude that's like big right now. But even she had shame and stigma about being Superhead, and the fact that her name is Superhead and we don't know her real name. You know, it almost like objectifies her because that's all we know her for.
Right.
So it's even when we're empowering, there's still sort of like this aura or shroud of shame still attached or around it.
It's very interesting when I think about her. This is not too much of a tangent, but like somebody who talks a lot about porn is this dude, Bill Maher, on that show. And he used to date her. And he went after her. He pursued her when that was her name.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I think there's also like this thing, like people will have date Superhead, and then 10, 15 years later be like, y'all shouldn't do shit like that. It's fucked up. You know what I mean? Like there's that aspect of where shame comes from. Older people pointing down to younger people. Stuff that they did that maybe they liked, maybe they didn't like, but they're definitely like, well, you shouldn't do that shit though.
It's like taking the shame that they're feeling and putting it onto someone. It's like perpetual.
Yeah.
Perpetual shame.
So what does everyone here do to help reduce shame, whether personally or professionally, whatever you feel like sharing?
Okay, sure. Professionally, I really like blasphemous porn. Naughty nuns, crucifying a Jesus-like figure, which will be coming out on Filthy Femdom soon. Yes, latex nuns, anything where people are repressed and expressing themselves when they're not supposed to, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yes.
It feels good. It feels empowering. And it also, like, just because the church is kind of, I just feel like it's looming over so many of us to just go back and say, like, I don't care. I'm gonna put something out there. It's blasphemous. I'm gonna go into the fire. And it takes away that power, that threat of hell, or that threat of being a sinner, being labeled as a sinner.
That's strong. That is a strong pushback for it.
Yeah.
Fire cleanses.
Thank you.
Fire is also a cleansing force. So you go into that fire. Khaleesi it up. For me, I feel like it's a lot of introspection, thinking through a lot of things, having amazing support systems, whether that's professional therapists or counselors that I've had either in couple counseling or solo throughout my life. Not as much as I feel like I would love to if I had more opportunity to. BDSM has also been super helpful with me in that way. Like, I only collar myself, I identify as a switch, and so I've been very distinctive in, like, what do I top in, what do I bottom in, instead of being more fluid and, like, I'm down, but whatever. And it's like, even certain kinks have sex involved and some do not have sex involved, and that's a sacred space that I hold for that, because I need to, like, release my shame and stigma around that, or what I've perceived, to be that from what I've seen in media and on TV. And then just the work that I'm doing here right now, being on this podcast, being in this house, making all the beautiful content that we've been making. All of that is like just moving that needle forward continuously. But it's ongoing work. I feel like it never stops. I couldn't even talk about or share the porn that I enjoyed or watched. And so it was so interesting that I was like starting to work in porn, but I couldn't talk about the porn that I watched because I felt like, what are they going to think of it?
Like, can you direct
that? Exactly. So it's definitely been a beautiful growth that I've seen for myself. And now I feel like I want to help other people with that process and bring them to other communities so that they're less alone, because I feel like that's sometimes the hardest part, is that you feel like you're the only one dealing with this, and then it becomes this negative spiral because you don't have other people to help you give perspective.
I take that.
So for me personally, it is do the thing. Do the thing. Yes. Like, that has been, like, for the last probably like 15 years has been like, do it. The thing that you're so scared of, do it, and then see if everything falls apart. Do it. Like, and it's just sort of like challenging the perceived consequences, and there hasn't been any fallout, so it's like, oh, I was scared of that for nothing, like, oh, they still love me, like, y'all were just kidding about, and really even challenging people to, them, like, you thought that if I did this, it was going to, what did you think was going to happen? Like, I'm still the same. I'm still here. That you don't have to watch it. You don't have to be a part of it. We can still enjoy each other's relationship, whatever that relationship or dynamic is, the same. But it has been really challenging. And then also going, if things do fall apart, were they ever really together because of this thing?
Was that shit a house of cards or what?
To begin with. So I feel like I've been on solid ground, so that's good. And then professionally, it's like, I think that the work that we do in Porn is super important, but I'm really passionate about creating sex positive institutions outside of the sex industry. Yeah. So like you were talking about, like, these other things shouldn't be happening because shame does exist in religious which we know, religious spaces that cause people to harm other people. You mentioned, yes, people should see therapists, but there's a lot of therapists who have a lot of sexual shame and, and even just that they need their own sort of reclamation of these words and reclamation of their own sex and sexuality to be able to help other people, to work in the medical field and help them be more sex positive, so that way when people need to share things about their sex, their sexual identity, gender affirming care, that they could have dealt with their shit before projecting it onto someone else. So that, like, even to, like, realtors and attorneys and just however people, where people show up, hell, tech people, that they I just like to, like, creep in those spaces and give my little workshops in a way that is important to them. Like, I usually go with money, like, hey, you're missing out on a whole clientele base. Yeah. And they're, like, cued in with the money. But before you can work with this community, how do you feel about this community? And start to just, like, put that little seed for them to see us as humans, see us as valuable members of their community, and see how we're, like, more aligned. We probably click on the same things and, have the same sexual impulses. Just some of us choose to do it out loud, very boldly, and some of us just want to be able to experience that in our very personal space. Yeah. And you?
Living it. Living it and trying to show and prove by example. I think that we didn't even, there's so many different forms of shame that we didn't even touch on, but, like, personally, man shame is a thing where it's just like, and across the whole spectrum, whether it's, engaging in different sex acts or sharing those sex acts, or whether those sex acts put you in a different power dynamic, like, whatever it is, there is a whole lot of man shame out there. And just being able to open up and share and like you said, do the things. I look at shame and fear kind of in the same way, that if you're afraid of something or you're ashamed of something, if you attack that shit head on, usually you're like, what, like you said, like, what the fuck was I even worried about? So it's kind of like one of those things, like, if you're out on a ledge, you never really realize that you can fly. And we all fly as fuck, so just do the shit.
Yes. So
I make boom. Just like that.
So between Royal Fetish Radio and Pornhub is doing this collaboration. Yes. So between their viewers, our listeners, is probably like 2 million people that will come across this podcast. So say hi to the people that we have.
Hey, and don't be ashamed of who you are. Just as we say, as long as it is consenting adults, live your life, enjoy your life orgasmically, and do your thing. Fly, yo. Yeah. Because you can do that shit.
So where should people find you, how you are living out your life and your work?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I am FiveStar, and my work on filthyfemdom.com.
Awesome. And how about you?
Awesome. Social media, Instagram, I'm Glittersaurus.Rex, like Tyrannosaurus, but with glitter. And then you can check out all my links and all the amazing people that I work with at Linktree/Glittersaurus Rex.
Yes, and of course you can find us RoyalFetishXXX.com.
And we all have some profile on Pornhub.
Absolutely.
So make sure you listen to previous episodes and be ready for future episodes.
Yeah. Enjoy yourselves. Peace.
Royal Fetish.
My life's like a movie, paparazzi picture. If it's to get richer, then I'll probably get with you.